said, will you come to Chicago to perform for our good friend Auntie Sissy? And she's a really awesome person because she has lived 85 years. That qualifies as pretty awesome in and of itself. She's got all sorts of stories to share and all sorts of wisdom to share of things that she did right and things that she might have done differently. And she's a really generous kupuna, or a generous elder, because she shares her stories with us. And she's been nothing but kind and giving to me, even though we're not blood. She's definitely like an older aunt figure or a tutu figure, a grandma figure. And it's such a treat to be able to come to Chicago and to sing for her. And when I come to Chicago, it's never just a one-shot deal. We try to get lots of stuff in. So I was able to work with June's hula students yesterday, her young children, her keiki, and work with them. And we were singing and dancing in here, so you might feel some of that energy in here this morning. And then, and to talk today, and she said, will you do Sunday morning Zen? And I said, for sure. What do you want me to talk about? And she said, we'll talk about that. And then maybe about a month ago, she called me and said, I need the title of your talk. And I thought, wow, okay. And it might have been an email, yeah? And it had gone out to a couple of people, and I looked around at my desk and I thought, well, what is most pressing right now? And my desk is always in a constant state of disarray because I'm working on 500 projects at a time, just like everybody else. And I said, oh, one-pointed attention. That's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about one-pointed attention and then have a subtitle of sticking with a practice. And she said, oh, right on, that's a good one. And I thought, I know, right? So I'm here today to talk with you not as somebody who has mastered anything, as somebody who's very much on the path, who is stumbling and bumbling and fumbling along the way, but recognizing the value of this. And I'm not a Zen teacher, but I am a Hawaiian teacher, which is weird, and I'm just going to give you a super brief bio so you understand why it is that I do what I do. Looking at me, you can tell that I'm a full-blooded Hawaiian, right? I'm from Pittsburgh, and I wound up in Hawaii because of an accident that I had that left one leg shorter than the other. I broke my hip, and I walked with a limp. And Western medicine had kind of said, I'm sorry, there's not a whole lot we can do. Enjoy your cane very much. And I had been a singer, dancer, actor in New York. And that wasn't what I wanted to hear when I was 28 years old. And I wound up taking hula because I fell in love with Hawaiian music. And then after I started taking hula, I decided, you know, I really want to give back to this culture that has given me my body back and has healed my heart on the inside because I was a New Yorker. And New Yorkers, we get a bad rep, but we do live in a city where isolation and kind of a stern viewpoint is sometimes necessary when you have 8.5 million people whizzing by you and taxi cabs everywhere. So, but Hawaiian music had softened me. And I went off to study Hawaiian music, and I wound up on the island of Molokai, which is 38 miles long and 10 miles wide. And it has about 7,500 people on the island, and not all of them are even full-time residents. So it's very remote. It has one of the highest percentage of Hawaiian blood, indigenous Hawaiian blood. And I wound up not only there, but I wound up working with this man who I call my Pops. And my Pops, he's kind of this legendary figure in Hawaii. He's an award-winning Hawaiian cultural practitioner, and he lives, much like his ancestors did, hundreds and hundreds of years ago, if not thousands of years ago. He lives totally old school. And actually they live off the grid now in a very remote valley called Halawa on the east end of the island, where we have no electricity unless we fire up the Yamaha generator, which is really loud and it smells like gasoline, but it's really fun because you can like turn on a light and you can watch a movie if you want to. We have a DVD player. And we have no telephone, which is awesome. Talk about one-pointed attention. And our water comes from 9 waterfalls, which feed one river, which feeds the stream, which feeds the pipes that come into our house. So we're not even able to drink that water because you would think pristine waterfall water, but we have lots of wild pigs in the mountains and wild boars who either hunt or are hunted by other animals, and they wind up in our water, and that's not something you want to drink. But it's good for flushing toilets. We like that. So I wound up there, and my world changed entirely because I was adopted into this family, and he became not only my teacher, but also my father. So I have my Pennsylvania dad, and I have my Hawaiian dad. I have my Pennsylvania mom, I have my Hawaiian mom. I have my Pennsylvania sister, my blood sister, and then I have this whole huge family of, there's 6 blood children, and then hanai, which is the Hawaiian word for adoption. There are probably 100 of us that have been brought into the family. I'm one of the closest to the immediate family because I go and I study with them. Everybody else has gone off and kind of done their lives. And my job became to study, to kind of cling to him. In Hawaiian, they call that pilipa'a, when you cling closely to something. And, excuse me, a few years into my studies, I was named a teacher and a successor in his line. So it's kind of bizarre to be a dude from Pittsburgh who is carrying a tradition, much like a Dharma transmission, of a tradition that's not my own, that's not of my people, and it's kind of a heavy responsibility. About 6 years ago, I came here to Chicago because June is not only well-grounded and rooted in the world of Zen, but she's very well-grounded and rooted in the world of hula. And she had me come and speak at the house 6 years ago. And that started a very different path for me. And one morning, Joshin and I were sitting at their big table in the house having coffee. And he said, you know, every time I hear you talk about this Hawaiian thing that you're doing, it's very similar to the Zen monastic tradition. And I think that's very interesting. And I said, I know, right? Because when I had been asked to start learning, I was totally kind of thrown into the wind. I had nothing underneath me. I didn't know how to teach this. I couldn't go to school and get a master's in how to be an educator of Hawaiian thought and tradition. Math, yeah. English lit, yeah, I could do that and get a certificate that said I knew how to do that. But this was something I didn't know. But I turned to the Buddhist teachers, especially the Buddhist teachers from the 60s and the 70s, the Westerners that had gone to the East and had come back, and they were trying to communicate these ideas that were foreign and somewhat exotic to the American public at that time. And I looked to them because I saw them as my teachers and my ancestors in this line of teaching. Like, if they did it, how can I learn from them? And their tradition, the Zen tradition, the more that I read about, especially the Zen tradition, I saw how it paralleled the Hawaiian tradition. Like I said, I live in New York. And I teach right now in New York City public schools, thanks to a nonprofit music ed organization that puts me in the classroom as a visiting teacher, which is so cool. Are there other educators here in the room? Thank you for doing what you do. Going into the school, I have so much respect because we see teachers going in with such a passion for sharing knowledge and education. And unfortunately, our education system is bogged down by a lot of bureaucracy, and the DOE is a heavy presence on everybody's hearts. And I see the teachers struggling in a class of 30 children when they keep cutting all the artistic programs and the things like that. And so the teachers are not only responsible for the core curriculum, but also all of this other supplemental stuff that the kids so desperately need. I'm really lucky. I get to come in and be a visiting teacher. So I sweep in. I'm there for a week, maybe 5 weeks, I think is the longest I've done. And then I swing back out. So I don't kind of fall under the heaviness of the head office and the Department of Education. So I study a lot of the Eastern teachers, especially someone like Sharon Salzberg, Joseph Goldstein, Jack Kornfield, and looking at these people to say, how did they communicate some of these truths? Because, I mean, Jack tells the story of going into the forests and living in Thailand or Burma. Thailand? I think, maybe. And living in the forest and then coming home and going to Elizabeth Arden's spa with his mother, and he was there in his monk's robes and green face clay. and the dichotomy of sitting like am totally not familiar with this world anymore, and I've got this green stuff on my face. Mud on your face makes a lot of sense if you live in the forest. That's true. I know that from experience. But sitting in Elizabeth Arden's spa in your monk's robes with green mineral clay might be that you paid for, not that you just accidentally got splashed on your face. That could be a very different experience. So I learned a lot from him. I learned a lot from him about how to communicate these things. Our city is, it's very busy, and it's very easy to get caught up in very busy thoughts. In order to function, I have to slow down. I have the great luxury, and I know it's a great luxury, of unplugging when I go to Molokai. I don't really have a choice. I get off the airplane, and when I wind up in our valley about an hour later, it's like hitting a brick wall at like 60 miles an hour. I come in and I'm all hopped up on caffeine from the flight, and I'm still talking New York style, and my Hawaiian family's like, whoa, welcome home. We slow down here. And they they go really slowly because they live off the grid of electronics and superficial life. And they live very much grounded in real life, which means that when the rooster crows at 4:20 every morning, that's the first time that everybody stirs. And when we're farming days, and I don't do a whole lot of farming. I'm kind of lucky that way too. But when we are in the taro patches and farming, we go in early in the morning because that's before the sun is at the highest peak. And so you don't want to be scorching in the sun, especially if you are fair-skinned, especially if you have vitiligo and you're turning into an albino every day. You don't want to be blistering in the sun. We go to sleep at night because we don't have the luxury of being able to plug in some device and stay up all night. I can't be on my phone. I can't be Facebooking and getting lost in the rabbit hole of Facebook. I can't even make phone calls. I can't really watch television after everybody goes to bed because you do have to fire up that Yamaha generator, and she's loud. So it's easy there to be one-pointed because it's kind of, it's almost mandatory that you slow down and that you focus on what's in front of you. When I was looking at preparing for this talk, I went online and I was like, okay, I know how I want to talk about one-pointedness from a Hawaiian perspective. But if I Google one-pointedness, what's going to come up? And of course, that's like a Buddhist hot word, right? It's like boom, 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 boom. All these things pop up. And the definition, as I understand it, is having an object of concentration, something for you to look at. Is that how you guys understand it too? So, how would you just?
We use the breath.
Right. A point of concentration.
We don't focus on a candle or something.
Right. Cool. Thank you for that. So, when I was looking at different traditions, and I was looking at like a mantra tradition or a candle flame, and I clicked into a Vipassana site, and one of the comments was talking about one-pointedness, talks about something that's forced, because concentration is forced on one thing. And I thought, well, yeah, if that's how you choose to do it, you could be very cruel to yourself and say, I said no. Or you could guide it back very gently. I get the chance to work with children. And so when I'm teaching them ukulele, it's the first time that they've ever held an ukulele before. And it's the first time that they're making shapes with this hand and making shapes with this hand and trying not to drop the instrument and trying to coordinate all of these things that look so simple. And their friends who play other instruments like the guitar can kind of look at the ukulele and poo-poo it and say, that's just a toy. But it is a real instrument, and it requires dexterity and skill and concentration. And most often the children will say, I can't do this, and they get frustrated. And I say, I know, right? I'm with you. But if you had a baby, and have you ever been near a baby? When a baby first stands up and everybody claps, you don't say to the baby, now do a round off back handspring. Because that would be like really mean, right? I have a 9-year-old student right now, and she thinks that's the funniest joke in the world. And so when I'm working with her, I'll say, are you trying to do a round-off back handspring? Or we'll say, do you ever say to a baby, stupid baby, you can't do that? And she said, would you ever call a baby stupid? And I said, no, right? You would be very gentle to the baby, and you'd say, that's really good, and come on, let's try again. Or when you're working with a puppy, and you're teaching a puppy to follow safety commands, right? You don't want the puppy to run into the street, so you teach the puppy to stay. But you don't scream at the dog. You don't teach it with anger. You could. I mean, that's always an option. I don't know that it's the most effective option, because then the puppy learns through fear and intimidation as opposed to gentleness. So my experience with meditation started back in high school. I loved the metaphysical things that I heard about. I was like, I'm going to learn how to levitate, and I'm going to see all this stuff. I was really into that. I thought this is going to be a wild ride. And then I started reading about Zen, and I was like, wow, it's so common, right? Like we just sit and we follow our breath. How boring is that? So when I'm sitting on the cushion, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to just show up to the cushion today. Now, in New York City apartments, by the way, some of them have lots of cockroaches. I don't, but some of them do. And I might have lived in a sublet once that had a lot of cockroaches. And when you walk into an apartment that has a lot of cockroaches and you turn on the light, it's like the whole room moves at once and it goes, boom, because they all scatter. And that's kind of what my brain feels like when I sit on the cushion. I sit down on the cushion, and it's like suddenly the light goes on, and there are a million thoughts and bugs and everything, and it's like, boom, and they're all there. And I go, oh, man. Okay, let's focus on the breath for a second. Let's come home. And how great is the breath, right? It's because as long as you're breathing, as long as you're still with us in this body, you've got that as something, right? I use my hands sometimes too. I don't know why, but being able to see my hand is a very grounding thing for me. I love to live in my head, and so seeing my physical body is a great thing. Sometimes my hand will bring me back, and I'll see that and be like, right, you've gone away. Come home, come home. And I could be really mean. I could force myself and say, stupid. Oh, what a bad meditator you are. Away. What a shame that you're sitting here doing this. Or I could say, wow, I love how Sharon Salzberg says it when she says, that's the magic moment, when you realize this is where the practice begins. You have gone away, and that moment where you say, oh, whoops, I'm off on something else. I'm off on a surfboard in Hawaii right now. Let me come home because I'm really sitting on a cushion in my apartment. In Hawaiian stuff, my pops will say every morning we have to make a lei. And this lei that we make is not made from flowers, which is really good because I have really hot hands. Not clammy hot hands, not like sweaty hot hands, but flowers don't do well in my hands. The Hawaiian elders don't like me to make lei. They're very gentle, but they're also kind of physical. And they'll, no, not you. That's not your responsibility. They'll take the flowers out of my hands. Last night, I almost held a lei that was going to go on our 85-year-old friend's head, and I took it from June, and I was like, I'll hold the lei, and she was like, I'll hold the lei. Remember how you get hot hands? That's okay, Brada, you get hot hands, right? And I was like, right. Again, focus on the hand, yeah? So, but the leaf, we make lei out of these leaves, these very durable, sturdy leaves that are called tea leaves. Not tea, T-E-A, that you drink, but T-I. And we call it la'i in Hawaiian. And they're long. They come down from like my shoulder to almost my waistline. And I am not a good lei maker. And my pops loves that I'm a really bad lei maker. And I'll say to him, when I get off the airplane, tradition is that he gives me one of these lei to welcome me home. And I love that because it's a beautiful tradition to have, and it's an embrace. A lei like that is, a lei could be a circle or it could be open-ended. And it's like the embrace of someone. So I'm carrying his embrace on my body. And in a practical sense, I love it because I'm thinking, tomorrow morning I don't need to make a lei because you made one for me tonight. Yay! Score. But every morning he'll say, Yakona, we have to go teach this morning, and you know what you have to do. Gotta go. It's like the guy who's like, gotta go make the donuts. I gotta go pick the leaves. So I gotta go, and there's protocol for removing the leaf from the plant. Then I have to take the plant and I have to wash the mud off of it and any bugs that have gotten stuck in the stalk. Then I have to take a knife or my teeth. If I'm feeling very modern, I use a knife. If I'm feeling old school that day, I use my teeth. And I remove the bone from the back of the leaf because it's got this stem that runs up the back, we call it the bone. And it's very, very stiff, and we have to take that out so that it's soft and pliable. Then I have to whittle the stem into this really narrow strip. Then I have to run that against the edge of a rock or a knife to make that soft and malleable. And I do that 6 times. Then I take 3 leaves and 3 leaves, and then I have to braid them together. And there's one point in making the lei where I have to take this leaf and wrap it around all the other leaves and shove it down. And I break it almost every time. And then I have to start over. Which is why I hate this. It's almost cruel that he makes me do this. Almost. But I said to him one time, you know, my lei are terrible, and I was really angry, because we were getting ready to go down. We offer teaching every morning, and we offer a cultural protocol every morning, and then we lead a hike to the sacred waterfalls. And in order for me to be ready, I have to be fully dressed. I have to tie this fabric across me and wear my tusks. I have tusks of the wild boar, and I've got to, shave and shower before you do all of that, and we have to clean the area. We brush it with these brooms, and then I've got to get fully dressed before I can go. And we were running late, and I had to start over with a lei. And I turned to him and I said, why are you making me do this? You know I can't do this. And he said, because it's your practice. And I thought, oh, you are so good. Because it isn't that I need to have this awesome lei. The lei is a chance for me to make myself ready. The lei is a chance for me to really become focused. When I go walking, I don't just randomly pull leaves off the plants. I have to look at the plants to see which ones are right for me today to be picked. There's a protocol in just removing the leaf itself. I have to be very aware and focused on what it is that I'm doing, or I will break the stem, or I'll cut it too thinly, or I'll wrap it around the wrong way, or whatever. And it becomes an object of attention. It becomes a focal point for me. And it becomes one-pointed. He's also making a lei beside me. Sometimes off to the side of me, looking at me like this the whole time. But he's also making a lei, and it brings us together. And when we go down to the beach, we're of one mind. We're ready. And when we greet the guests that day, when we are ready to do the customary protocol that day, we're fully focused, and we are prepared, and we are of one mind. We start moving in sync with each other. And it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. I've seen video of us in tandem working, and it's amazing that he moves this way and I'll move opposite in order to embrace the crowd, or we will move together, kind of like it's choreographed, but it's all organic because we've come together. And all night long, I'm often, maybe I'm back in New York in my dreams, maybe I'm in Chicago in my dreams, maybe I'm in Scotland. I love to visit Scotland in my dreams. But when I'm getting ready to teach, I better be there. When I'm with these people, my responsibility, my kuleana is to be with them. And I need to come home, come home, come home. When I do that, it works. When I don't do that, it's less than successful. The morning that I'm telling you about, the morning that I broke the lei, was it was a big morning in our world, in my teaching, my studies with him. Because I said, well, what am I supposed to do now? We've got to go down. And he said, don't you get it? And I thought, I do. Hold on. And he said, so what if you understand, tell me what the answer is. What is, like a koan, right? What is the answer to this conundrum that you've gotten yourself into? And so I took one leaf, and I took another leaf, and I tied those 2 leaves together, and I draped them around my shoulder. And I said, I'm ready to go to the beach, And he said, "You're ready to go to the beach." It had nothing to do with the beauty of the lei, but it had everything to do with the practice of coming together. And lei making for me there is it's a movement meditation in the morning. Also, when we're working, we don't speak. He doesn't want to talk. He says it's not time for busy mouth. It's time for hana, it's time for work. When we're working in the taro patches, we have to be very aware of what it is that we're doing, because if we do it improperly, we could destroy the plant. If we destroy the plant, we don't eat. It's pretty simple. He is very gentle in how he helps me to come back. He's strict in other ways. We have some pretty legendary moments, some legendary blow-ups. But he's very gentle in how he teaches me. And I don't know that I would have been as gentle or been able to work with children especially had I not had his example of teaching me how to do it. And when I work with the children in the schools, and we come back, the classroom can get really loud really quickly. And the teachers in New York, rather than screaming at them, because our children there are used to loud noises. They live in worlds where windows are open and you hear cars and sirens and everything. So loud noises and yelling, it doesn't do anything. So the teachers clap. They'll clap a rhythm. They'll go like, and the kids clap it back. Well, when I heard that, that's a pattern that we play on the ipu. U-te, u-te-te. So we use that. When I go into the classroom, I say, u-te, u-te-te, and the whole class will chant back, u-te, u-te-te. That's how we come back. That's a sound that we use to bring people home. They could all be ready. They lose their minds. I talk about lizards in the toilet. You can't go into a kindergarten classroom and mention a toilet without the room erupting into at least a good 35, 45, maybe 60 seconds of extreme chaos, because they're like, "Oh my gosh, Uncle Jason just said toilet. That's the best word ever," and they lose their minds. And I'm totally willing to go there with them because it wins them over. But I need to get them to come back. Now, I could scream at them, "Stupid children, what are you doing?" How wrong would that be? It isn't forced, but it is suggested by me giving this sound, which is a signal to them, "Oh, something's happening." And if they don't all come back right away, they have a wonderful way of self-governing. Because if one child does it, then the other child sees it, and then they do it too. And it may take a couple ute-utes to come back. So we use sound in that way. I've learned to be gentle. And when I'm sitting on the cushion, because meditation is something that I use I use it as a practice. One of its benefits is that it helps ground me and helps bring me home. And I'm able to do things. A one-pointed activity that I use in everyday life, I make a list, literally, on an index card. And I can touch that list and come home. I could be walking down the hall and think, "Oh, I've got to make the bed." And as I'm walking toward the bedroom, I think, "But wait, first I need to do this. And oh, I need to go to the post office, and. But if I have something, some gentle anchor to touch and come home to, bring that attention back to one. Because really, it's gone like all those cockroaches. Boom, the lights are on, you see everything, and 1,000 things flying at once. But if I have something that I can touch at that moment, one-pointed attention, it brings me back, right. And then I can kind of calm myself down and maybe organize myself a little bit, figure out a hierarchy of things to do. Performing is something that requires one-pointed attention. When I'm on stage, how can I share this with you? When I was young, I got the chance to do a run of a show that we did hundreds of performances of this particular show. Hundreds. And when we all learned the show, we were very focused on what was in front of us because we were getting paid, this was our job, and there was a very dire consequence, which meant that we were fired if we didn't do it. And it was very easy to stay focused early on because it was something that was new. And new is always fun, right? You can focus on something that's bright and shiny. It's attractive, I'm in, this is great. But what happens when it became routine? And after about 50 shows, we were over it. And I was 20, 21, and I was living on my own. And I was having crushes on everybody in the cast. And I was thinking about the parties we were going to go to that night. And we were so silly in the show. And the problem is, if you do that, you're doing such a disrespectful thing to the audience because we were still new and shiny to them. They were fascinated by what we were doing, and it was boring to us already, but it was new for them, which was kind of disrespectful. And we devised a game called Pass the Shark. I can't believe I'm telling you this. This is so not what I was going to talk about. But Pass the Shark was, we had a bar that we went to, and there was a drink called the Shark Bite because we were in the South in a beach town. And this rubber shark was the toy that you got in your cup. And so there were a couple of these rubber sharks backstage. And normally we were discouraged from doing any kind of games on stage because it would be considered disrespectful, and there were real safety concerns. We could have gotten hurt. But Pass the Shark was allowed. And the object was we had to have the shark in our costume somewhere and then secretly pass it to someone else on stage. Now, the show became rote, and we knew our tracks very easily. I knew that, like, I would sing the song and run off and take off one costume and put on another costume and pop out of a box, as like dressed up like a rabbit and do a rap at one point. And it was crazy. I did all this crazy stuff. But this shark became this thing that people were like, oh, where's the shark? And you never knew. And it became not the breath on the cushion, but it definitely became an object of focus. And it kept us very alert because you could be dancing with somebody. I had a dance partner that I did one number with, and she always managed to surprise me because the shark would be peeking out of one part of her costume. Only I could see it because it was up. She was facing upstage, facing toward the back of the stage. And we'd be dancing and I'd look and she'd have like the shark's head right here. And I'd be like, you got me. And then like she at some point would have to pass it to me and I would have to find somebody else to pass it to. But it became an object of focus during this show. And so when I read this comment on this Vipassana thread, I thought, yes, it could be something that is very forced, and that would feel very uncomfortable, and I probably wouldn't engage with it for very long. I would definitely sit for as long as it was exciting and new and fresh, but the minute it became rote, I wouldn't engage with it because it's forced. But if I could learn to be gentle with myself on the cushion, the same way that I wouldn't tell a baby to do a round-off back handspring, or if I could find the magic in not magic in like David Copperfield or what was his name? It's an Illusion from the 70s. Doug Henning, yes. It's an illusion. Not that kind of magic, and not levitating kind of magic. But if I could find the magic in something, like the breath is pretty magical. If you just watch it and you don't control it, oh my gosh, the first time I got breath instruction and it was like follow the breath, I immediately stopped breathing. Because I was like, well, now that I'm focusing on it. And then I heard like, hey, in the natural cycle of breath, guess what happens? There's a pause. And then I would notice the pause, but I would fixate on the pause, and I was like, I'm not going to breathe again. Oh my gosh, I'm dead. Like that kind of thing. But it was kind of new and shiny at that point. It was kind of fun and fascinating to watch. But the breath is always there, which is fascinating. And if I can really let go and not fixate, but just gently have that in my awareness, then I can see like, wow, today I've got a shallow breath, which usually ends up turning into a deeper breath later on, which usually ends up turning into a shallow breath again, and then probably a deeper breath, and then I'll sneeze, like something will happen. That could be the shiny thing that brings me back. When I went to Molokai to study, I wanted specifically to learn the music of Molokai. And my pops at the time wasn't living in his ancestral home. And he said to me, we're going to go to Halava. You and I will go and we will live there and we'll spend time in the cabin. And I was there for 2 weeks. And I was so excited to go and be with him. And I was afraid of him because he is kind of a revered teacher. Not a Himalayan-style monk, but definitely a forest-style monk. And I didn't want to lay my agenda on him. So this one day he says, "You want to learn some music?" "Yes, I do." And he said, "Get your ukulele." And at the time they had this big front porch, so we sat at this table, and he said, "Do you know the song?" And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, he's giving me the keys to the kingdom right now. This is what I've been waiting for. This is a song that only exists on Molokai. When I go back home, I'm going to be the coolest guy in the whole world because I have this treasure that this wizened man is going to share with me. This is everything. And he said, "Do you know the song Hula o Maki?" And I'm going through, and at the time I didn't speak Hawaiian, and I was still kind of a neophyte in all things Hawaiian, and I was like, "Hula o Maki, hula o Maki." "Yes, I'm familiar with it." And he said, "What do you know about it?" And I said, "Well, I kind of know how the melody goes." And he says, "Go get the blue book." Now in Hawaiian music, we call this the blue book. It came out a couple years ago. It's called Himele Aloha. And it is our primary text as a Hawaiian musician, because it was put together by scholars. And I pulled this off of June's shelf this morning because I couldn't remember the story of Hula o Maki. But I figured I kind of remembered the melody. And he said, "Go get the blue book." So I went and got the blue book. And he said, "Read out loud." He loves to be read to. I thought it was like something mystical. No, he just likes to hear people read to him. "Read to me what it says on the bottom." And it's a song about the island of Kauai and a boat wreck that happened off of Kauai. And I thought, okay, we'll open with this. He's just doing a little icebreaker with me. I could do a song about Kauai, and then he's going to give me the magical Molokai music, right? So we start to sing it. And I butcher it. And he says, "I'd like you to try it again." And I thought, okay, touche. I'll do it again, and I'm going to do it really well this time. And then you're going to give me a Molokai song. And then he said, "Again, hanho. Again, again." And so for like 30 minutes, which in Halava is like 12 years, I'm sitting with him playing this song over and over and over again. And I'm thinking, ugh, this is not what I want. Dude, this is not what I signed up for. So he sees me start to get frustrated. And I'm very much a New Yorker, especially when I first touched down. So I'm sure I showed it on my face very clearly that I was annoyed. And he said, "What's making you namu namu? What's making you grumble?" And I said, "Well, I was really hoping," and then I'm backtracking and I'm trying to be all reverential, like, "I'm so grateful, oh honored one, that you've shared this time with me to this music. It's awesome. But I was hoping maybe you would share a song from Molokai with me." And he looked at me and he said, "Is that what you want?" And I said, "Yeah, that's what I want." And he said, "Good. Do this song again." And I said, and he said, "And the whole time that you're here, that will be your song." And I said, "But I want Molokai music. That's why I'm here. I mean, I traveled a long distance to come here and be with you. This is what I'm here for." And he was like, "You'll do Hula o Maki. That is what we will practice." And I was so frustrated with that because he'd given me this awesome practice and I hated it. It was like receiving the breath instruction for the first time. I was like, "That's it? That's all you're giving me?" I was ready to learn to rise up off the rug, man. I wanted something special. You're giving me the breath. You're giving me Hula o Maki. This isn't even the right island. We laugh about this now a lot. And he said, "Iakona," that's my name in Jason in Hawaiian. He said, "Iakona, it doesn't matter what song I give you. I could have given you a song that comes specifically from Halava Valley, and that would have been great. But instead, your kuleana, your responsibility, is to live in this song. And I'm going to challenge you with this thought. You could live in this song for the rest of your life. This song could be your song for the rest of your life. And your challenge would be to stay with that song for the rest of your life." And I thought, "Old man, you are crazy. I don't even like this song." And later, when we talked about it, and he was like, "Tell me about your relationship with the song." And I said, "I hate it." And he said, "Good. Then it's a very good song for you to stay with for the rest of your life." And to this day, all these years later, I still haven't learned it. I mean, I sing it and it won't stick. It just won't. It's forever an obstacle for me. And when I play it, which I'm not going to do this morning, when I play that song, it's a falsetto song, and I have to warm my voice up into this crazy register to do it. And it's a real struggle, and it's a beast. It is a beast to deal with every time. And he's right. It is such a blessing to have that song as part of my repertoire. I kind of hope that I never like it, because every time I play it, I learn something new. When you play for hula musicians, or hula dancers, you play songs hundreds of times because they are learning it, and it's like, again, again, again. And it's easy for a hula musician to say, "It would be so easy for you just to push play on a CD." And then I hear my pops like, "It would be so good for you to play the song 100,000 times." And he's right. And as a musician, I sit off to the side. And as a teacher, when I'm working with hula groups in New York, I have the opportunity to share some cultural insights, some cultural ike. And I hear the dancers grumble, and they'll say, "Oh, we already did this song. We learned it 3 years ago. I hate it. Can't we get new choreography?" And that makes me nuts. Because hula isn't choreography, hula is life. And then I say to them, "You know, you could live in that one song for the rest of your life." And then the dancers will say, "But we hate that song. That's the song that we learned when we first started out." And I think, good. And then I'll say to the teacher, "You want to do it again? I'm ready. Makakao. Let's do it again." Because it's beautiful. Because the challenge is, that's your practice. And the practice isn't always fun. And it focuses the dancer on that one thing. It's not one-pointedness in terms of concentration sitting on the cushion, but it is one-pointedness in that they're moving as one body. If it's one solo hula dancer, they're giving you the story of that song. And they're dancing on the shoulders of their ancestors. Everybody who taught their teacher, who taught their teacher's teacher, the hula dancers that have come before, the hula dancers that will come in the future, you are part of a chain. And you have a responsibility. And you show up and you do that hula as though your life depended on it. And sometimes you fall out of it, and thankfully your body is moving, and you come back, and you figure out, and you go away, and you think, "I hate this hula, and I've got laundry to do tonight." And you come back to it, and it becomes a point of attention. And it brings us back. And it doesn't matter so much. It's not that it's a mystical thing. It's a very basic thing. The breath is the breath is pretty mystical, but the breath is pretty basic too. It's something that everybody has. As long as you're still with us in this body, you've got breath. It could be very common and easy to say, "But I already learned that. I'm ready for something new. I've already passed through that gate. I'm ready. Bring on the next one." Well, but maybe that is the gate. Maybe the gate is to sit exactly where you are. Maybe that's what it distills down to. Maybe as a laymaker, I will always tear the leaf. Maybe I will always make the beautiful flowers wilt. But that's my job. That's what I do. When I'm there, that's part of our thing. And it allows me to come home. And it allows me to go away and grumble. And it allows me to come home. And it allows me to love my pops. And it allows me to come home. It allows me to miss New York, and it allows me to come home to the lay. It allows me to fantasize about someday when I'm a bajillionaire. I don't know. I can't even imagine what a bajillionaire would be like. But if I was a bajillionaire, I could have that fantasy. But I also have this lay right in front of me. And it's my job to do it because that's my task at hand. That's my practice of the moment. And later on, maybe I'll have to do something else. But at that moment, I owe myself the gift of bringing my attention back to the now. Every time I make a lay with my pops, he is 77, and every time I make a lay with him, I think, this could be our last lay together. And when I come home from Molokai, I save my lay from him, because I have to wear one that I've made, which is really not very pretty, and one that he's made, which is beautiful. And I save them because they're made with his hands. And in Hawaiian tradition, that is someone's mana, their energy is within that. And that's really precious. And I can see how he braided and how he worked the leaves and made this beautiful object that lives in my home. He's older than me, but he's mortal and I'm mortal. And it isn't necessarily fair for me to assume that, hey, this may be our last lay together because you may die. I mean, I live in New York City. No. But I live in a very human body too. And I don't know. And so I love the fact that I have the opportunity to be focused when I'm with him on the task at hand and our time together. I'm lucky because we get something, it's like pulling the handle on a vending machine. I get something at the end. I get a reward. I get to wear this lei. But the lei is really kind of secondary. It's really the experience of being with him and focusing with him as we prepare for the day. And the practice is not always fun, nor has it been magical and mystical in a levitating way. But it is very magical because it brings me home. And home is wherever I am at that moment. I was talking with Teddy the other day, and he said, I'm really excited to hear what you're going to talk about. And I said, me too. And he said, so, because Hawaiian tradition, like we would learn something and then let go. When you study anything, right? Like as a voice major, we would learn how to place our voice so that we could sing certain notes. But we had this really crazy teacher, Lee Cass, I loved him, and he would say, so if you were standing on the corner and you saw a child running into the street, would you stop and think, okay, my passaggio's here, and I'm going to think, oh, hey, little boy, don't run into the street. Or would you just go, hey, right? You would let go, and you would just do. If you're trained well enough, you can let go and just do kind of thing. And when I'm working with my pops and giving a talk, or when I'm lucky enough to travel here and give a talk, hopefully whatever knowledge has been given to me, I've chewed it up, I've digested it a little bit, and then I can sit with you. And I love being able to say, I'm no master, man. I'm totally right there. I'm on the cushion struggling every second along with you guys. I only sat for the second sitting today. And I sat down and I was like, okay, come home. Where's your breath? Then I was afraid that I was dead because I couldn't find it. Then I had to stifle a sneeze because I didn't want to disrupt you guys. And I thought, wow, I'm giving the talk and I'm going to be looked at as such a goofball because I'm over here sneezing and I'm all judgmental. And it was such a wonderful process to be like, come home, come home. You're not asking the baby to do a round off back handspring right now. You're just focusing on the breath. And guess what? You're still here, so your breath is still here. Come home, come home. And as June's introducing me, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, there are lots of people. Sometimes I'm here and it's like 3. And sometimes I'm here and it's like, wow. And it's so exciting. And we're Facebooking. Hi, Facebook. And that's exciting. And thinking about all of that. And I could go off in my head and think like, what if I, or I could just be here with you right now and talk right from my na'au, right from my gut, which is very full right now because we had good food last night. But right from my na'au and speak and say, this is where I'm at, and meet you guys where I'm at. As someone who's right on the path with you, as someone who literally sits on the cushion, just like you guys, but someone who finds the need for one-pointedness everywhere. And in today's world, where we're seeing so much chaos right now, and so much animosity between people and in families, we're watching civil wars erupt all over the place. I think having a practice that brings you home is so very important because it allows you to, if you have a practice, you can step back. I totally bite the hook and get sucked right into the arena, ready to go, battle. Because I sit, I can step back and say, okay, I've totally bitten the hook. Hang on a second. Now I can listen for a minute. I can hold space with you. But I can't do that if I don't practice it. And it's not practice because I'm going to show off and say like, look how good I can do. I can fold my legs and I can sit on a cushion and I can hold my back straight. The practice pays off in the pudding at that very moment where I can say, wow, look how I got This thought has me hooked. And now I can say, come home, come home, come home, come home. I have my breath, I have my breath, I have my breath, I have my breath. And I don't need to necessarily lunge across the table. What did you say? Is that what you think? So you guys, I so enjoy sitting with all of you. It's such a gift every time because I get to be a part of this community for as long as I'm here. But I sit with you all and people everywhere who are sitting as part of a global community. In whatever tradition that people are sitting in, whatever contemplative tradition that people are sitting in, and bringing ourselves home, which hopefully makes us very skillful, or at least perhaps a little more skillful, in how we deal with things. And thank you so much for letting me come and be here today. I always bring my ukulele because it's the Hawaiian way, like you gotta offer something. And we have a beautiful, not only hula dancer, but accomplished hula teacher, akumu hula, ma ne'i make'ia lumi i ke'ia manawa. We have a beautiful hula teacher here in the room with us right now. And it would be an honor. Would you dance?
Of course I do.
Ah! This is always a treat. It's a treat to play for hula dancers always, and it's such a treat when you have someone who is very well grounded within a lineage. Lineage, same. In the Buddhist tradition and talking about Dharma lineage, Hawaiian tradition the same way. We look at our ancestors and we honor them in a very similar way. And so when you have someone that's rooted in a tradition, it's a very different experience than someone who just knows where to place their hands. So mahalo for that. What would you like to dance?
Well, I think we should dance Sissy's song.
Okay, so I wrote a song for Auntie Sissy for her birthday. It's in tune. For her 85th birthday, about her life. And we've made 3 verses, and I sent it to June. This was like a month ago. I was supposed to send it to her, but I couldn't finish the song. I had a big wall up. And I sent it to her a week ago on Saturday, and I said, I'm done. And she said, I love it, Brada, and it's also 1 week before the party, and I don't think I'm going to be able to do anything for it. And then the next morning, she sent me an email, and she said, I'm ready. The hula is done. And the hula dancers shared it last night. So this is a song about Auntie Sissy, but really this is about any of our kupuna ladies, our elder ladies that have left Hawaii and built a family here on the continent or elsewhere in the world. Makakau.
And so let me do a little
Sure.
preface because when you learn something, you know, in hula anyway, it's really grounded in your body, like our meditation practice. Mm-hmm. And so if you haven't done it a lot, it's kind of not totally in my body. So this is a kind of an excuse, I guess. That I'm saying.
But
if
it's
I
still
forget, you know.
It's still new and shiny.
It is new.
It's a new and shiny toy to focus on right now.
All right, we'll see how much my body has learned.
You got it. You got it. The young girl takes the stage, a grass skirt tied around her waist, and she dances for the tourists in Kailua corner town. She grins from ear to ear as the crowds start to cheer for this brown-skinned island princess wearing a floral crown. The hula speaks of her kupuna, how they lived and loved upon the sacred sands. She carries their voices in her heart, and she tells their stories with her hands. She travels far from Hawaii shores with her husband whom she adores, and builds a family stitched with aloha, a loving circle where tuberose lay. But when the keiki are tucked in bed, and thoughts of home fill her head, she gazes at the moon through her window, and her body starts to sway. Her hula speaks of her kupuna, how they lived and loved upon the sacred sands. She carries their voices in her heart, tells their stories with her hand. Sitting in a rocking chair, with her family all gathered there, they say, Tutu, tell us a story about your golden island days. And with a gentle nod of her head, she says, I'll dance for you instead. And as she rises, her body grows stronger, and the years all fall away. Her hula speaks of her kupuna, how they lived and loved upon the sacred sands. She carries their voices in her heart, and she tells their stories with her hands. She carries their voices in her heart, as she tells their stories with her hands. Oh, isn't she the best? It's such a pleasure. Thank you for having me here today. And I'm so glad to be on the path with you all. I'll be thinking of you while I'm sitting, not only in New York or wherever the journey takes me, but for sure in Molokai as well. Mahalo. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. That was beautiful.
Beautiful.